Hello and welcome to yet another Doctor Who video. In this video I'll be talking to you guys about my guilty pleasure stories, what most fans absolutely hate, but I've got a bit of a soft spot for, and I'll be using this to help me go through some of these stories. Well, I'm not going to go through all of these, I'm just going to go through some stories what most fans hate but I quite enjoy. So this will help me determine which are good stories and which are bad stories. So that's just to help me. So without further ado, let's roll titles like any other people should do. So yeah, roll titles. Okay, so let's go for the first Doctor, but before I start, I'm not going to be doing any of the missing episodes because they're sort of hard to judge, and I think everyone loves the lost stories. I think everyone enjoys the ones that are missing, because I quite like the Savages. Okay, some people don't like it, but okay, I've said a guilty pleasure from the missing episodes, but let's actually get cracking. There's only one I can actually think of what's on DVD, and it is the Space Museum. Yeah, this story, part 1, is fantastic. Now this is the thing I find with most 1960s stories. Part 1, such as the Sensorites, fantastic opening, very atmospheric, but the rest of the story, it sort of dips. But this, I quite enjoy it. It's got some brilliant science fiction elements, such as, you know, the Doctor arriving sort of in the future. There's some, well, not in the future, but in the future, because there's little things. But there is one thing that really does stand out for me in this story, and that's William Hartnell's Dalek impression. Doesn't that just make you want to watch the story, just have William Hartnell do a Dalek impression? It's just exciting. Yeah, that's one recommendation for it. Just get it because of Hartnell's Dalek impression, because it is quite amusing. You get to see a light side of the first Doctor, which he's quite renowned to be quite a grumpy old person. But this story, it's very talkative, but it's got some really good science fiction elements which you're bound to expect in a science fiction show, and it has some brilliant concepts, and it's just all around pretty good. I mean, the first part is the strongest, but to be honest, I quite enjoy, while I enjoy all the stories, all parts of it. So yeah, my guilty pleasure for the first Doctor is okay. So now on to the second Doctor. The second Doctor has such classic stories such as The Seeds of Death, Enemy of the World, The Web of Fear, The Invasion, Tomb of the Cybermen, The Moon Base, and The Crotons. This just gets overlooked in my opinion. It's quite a good story. I mean, it's the first story written by Robert Holmes. Robert Holmes, for me, is one of the best classic series writers. He knows how to write Doctor Who. Okay, he wrote a rubbish story called The Space Pirates. Definitely do not recommend that one. That is a no-go. But The Crotons, it's quite good for his first attempt. Okay, it's not a classic like what he would later write for the Tom Baker and John Pertwee era, but still, it's a pretty good story. The Crotons themselves, they look very good at the chest upwards, but the lower half is just basically tin foil. Shh, don't tell anyone. But still, it's a very good story, and I quite enjoy it. And I sort of enjoyed it when it first came out because there wasn't many Troughton stories, but now, thankfully, the Troughton section is growing, and hopefully it will grow a bit more. But the Crotons is definitely one of my little guilty pleasures for the second Doctor. Now onto my favourite Doctor from the classic series, John Peel. Third Doctor, I have multiple entries. First one is Colony in Space. People say this is quite a boring story. I find it alright. It's iconic in the way that it's the first venture into space for Joe Grant and for the third Doctor. It continues the same season 8 style, with the Master just regularly appearing in every story in season 8, which is, when you look at it now, or if you're doing a Doctor Who marathon, it's a bit tedious, but still I think it's great. It's got a great idea, and I just think it's quite a good story actually. It goes quite quick. I do enjoy Colony in Space. I'll have to review it one day to get my full thoughts across. Second story from the Third Doctor era is the Mutants. Now people might say, oh, you're wrong, this is as boring as Badgers. Badgers aren't boring, Badgers are nice, I like Badgers. The Mutants covers an array of Doctor Who. I mean, I love the sort of moral element. It covers racial awareness, prejudice. It just covers it. It's got such a moral thing, you know, that the Mutts must be wiped out because they're wrong, they're not, they're inferior, they just have to be gone. And I just love the idea that, you know, the Doctor sees through this and he finds out what actually the Mutts are, and you just sort of, well, to be honest, it's just a great story. It's sort of overlooked in the Pertwee era, but still, it's a really good story. It is a bit slow to start off with, but it does build up. It goes quite quick and then it slows down. It's sort of slow, fast, slow, fast. It's sort of that sort of thing. But it still is a pretty good story. My next entry for the Third Doctor is the Time Monster. Now, this is definitely a guilty pleasure. This story is a lot of fun. It's basically the Doctor and the Master having a bit of a battle with each other, you know, doing TARDIS, ramming each other and stuff like that. It's all good fun. But the story really does get going when it gets to Atlantis, and it has some brilliant scenes with Bessie. And I'm a huge fan of Bessie, so this is brilliant. And I love John Pertwee's costume in this. I love the tartan cloak. The tartan cloak's just cool. Final entry for the Third Doctor is Invasion of the Dinosaurs. Now this gets frowned upon because of the renowned dinosaurs you can see there. But if this does have actual CGI, which this DVD sadly doesn't, the story would be an all-time classic. The story's there. Malcolm Holker's devised such a very good thing. This is what I love about the Pertwee era. Each story sort of has a moral, and I just love it because it sort of reflects a time of what the story was made in. And it's just brilliant. It introduces the Whomobile, the Doctor's snazzy car, which only got 2 appearances, but still pretty cool. Invasion of the Dinosaurs is definitely a good story, and it's definitely overlooked in the Pertwee era. So yeah, now let's go into Tom Baker. Yes. Entry for the Fourth Doctor is the Android Invasion. Now this story gets overlooked because it's in such a fantastic season. I believe Terror of the Zygons in there, and Pyramids of Mars, Seeds of Doom. Those sort of stories are in that season. I just think this gets overlooked. It's got a brilliant idea, but the story at the end, the ending is rather confusing. But yeah, it's still quite a good story. It's got quite a good few location scenes. Location is brilliant on my second entry for the Fourth Doctor is the Masque of Mandragora. This is a historical story. It's brilliant. You can really believe that this little Welsh town is in Italy, and it introduces us to the secondary TARDIS console. And Tom Baker gets a few badass moments with a sword and horse riding and stuff like that. It's all quite good. I mean, Tom Baker's quite action-packed in season 13, 14, especially in the Seeds of Doom when he's punching people. It's just brilliant. Yeah, well, it's not brilliant punching people, but yeah, this is quite a good story with the Mandragora Helix. Just brilliant. Entry for the Fourth Doctor is the Invisible Enemy. It introduces us to K9. I love K9. I've got nothing against K9. And it's quite good. It introduces us to the Swarm, who is getting a Big Finish audio called Invasion of the Swarm or something like that. Sylvester McCoy audio. And it's quite a good story. Again, I break up this story into 2 parts, watch 2 parts, enjoy it, and then another 2 parts, and yeah, it's only a 4-parter, goes quite quick for me, and still it's quite good. It's got the smallest Doctor Who monster, which is the Swarm, as I've said, there they are. sort of shrimp creatures. Final entry for the 4th Doctor, and it is the State of Decay. Now, it introduces a new sort of element to the Time Lords about the great vampires, and I'm not a huge sort of horror fan, but I love this story for some weird reason. I just love it. It's just brilliant. It's got, I don't know, I really don't know how to describe it, but it has some really good gothic elements to it, such as sacrifices, and it has a science fiction twist which I'm not going to reveal because I'll just spoil it, and it definitely is a story you definitely need to check out because it is pretty cool. Well, there's 2 main science fiction elements, what are shocking. So now we move on to the 5th Doctor. Okay, so my entry for the 5th Doctor is the Arc of Infinity. Now this gets overlooked because it is included in a box set with Time Flight, which is, I'm not even going to say what it's like. But this is probably the better story out of the 2. It sees a return of Omega. Probably not the best story he's actually been in. Probably the best story for Omega is the 3 Doctors, and has Colin Baker in it playing Commander Maxil, introducing the thing that the Doctor can look like someone else, if you like. But yeah, it's quite good. It's got some location filming in Amsterdam, and it's quite interesting. It's not the greatest story, but still it's okay. For Colin Baker, I've chosen The Mark of the Rani. Now this probably the best Rani story. It has the Master and the Rani. They're quite a good double act together. Got quite an odd ending. The ending is rather confusing because it's not explained how they get out of the situation, but still, it's okay. It's quite a good historical story. It's plays with history very well, the Luddites and the Rani, using them to their advantage. It's really good. Okay, so my entry for Sylvester McCoy is Time and the Rani. Okay, this is definitely a guilty pleasure, but this is the story what introduces us to this to Sylvester McCoy. Well, Sylvester McCoy in a wig first, and then Sylvester McCoy himself. But hey, yeah, his Doctor's very sort of all over the place, mad, bonkers. But I think that's what a Doctor should be in their opening story, very mad and bonkers, because, you know, you just changed your whole face, you've changed your persona, so I think you are going to be a bit bonkers, but sadly it carries on throughout season 24, but he does calm down near the end of it. But still, it's quite a good story. I love the Tetrap. The Rani's got an alright plan, but the plot doesn't come into it quite until late on. It doesn't come on until 2 or 3 parts, I don't know, but it is still quite a good story. Seeing Kate O'Mara, God rest her soul, dressed as Melanie Bush is quite, there's another reason to see the Rani dressed as Mel. My second entry for Sylvester McCoy is yet another story from season 24, Delves from the Bannermen. I don't know why I love this story, I just remember getting it and just enjoying it. It's got quite a good battle sequence, it's got quite a good opener. It's got Ken Doddin, a British comedian, and it's quite, well, it's good actually. It's historical in the way that it's 1950s. It seems odd saying the 1950s is a historical, but still, it's quite good. The supporting cast are okay, but some elements I don't like the Shimmer baby and stuff. But I suppose it's necessary to the plot. But still, it's an okay story. Okay, so now on to the new series. So, from series 1, the only weak story I can possibly think of, what is probably a guilty pleasure for me, is Boomtown. I enjoy it. It's quite a moral story yet again. You know, could you take someone for dinner then execute them the next day? That's basically that. Yeah, it's a good story. The Slivine family, or Blonde Passaday Day Slivine or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember her name. But that's pretty all I can remember. But yeah, Boomtown is a pretty good story. Probably the weakest, but the Long Game I suppose is the Long Game is probably the weakest, but yeah, I suppose Boomtown second to weakest, but still I enjoy Boomtown. From David Tennant, The Idiot's Lantern. No, sorry, New Earth, that's it, New Earth. I do like New Earth. I don't think it's a bad story at all. It's definitely it's just, people just keep looking at it, it's just, they just miss it. And to be honest, it's quite good, despite the Romance of Rose and Ten, what I'm not a fan of, but it's okay. It's quite a good story. I love the Sisters of Plenitude. Then we have The Idiot's Lantern. Well, hey, we got it right that time. Yeah, it's quite a good script using telly, you know. I like stories what they use everyday items. That's why I like the Autons, because they're plastic and they use everyday items to their advantage, and I just love that. Next we have Love and Monsters. No, only joking. And the next one is Fear. No, I'm not going to say those. They're just bad. They belong to be at the bottom of the Doctor Who poll. Not. They don't deserve to be in Guilty Pleasures. That's all I can think of for the Tennant series. Unless you count Shakespeare Code. I do like the Shakespeare Code. Just trying to run through all the other ones. Yeah, I better go into Matt Smith now. For Matt Smith, Victory of the Daleks, and I've probably watched Victory of the Daleks more than I've watched The 11th Hour. That just proves I love it. I love the Ironsides and the Paradigm Daleks themselves. I think they'd work better in the genesis of the Daleks colour scheme, the grey and black, or the 1960s Daleks. I think they'll look more menacing instead of these bright Power Ranger Daleks or Teletubbies, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, Vampires of Venice is really good. I love the sort of twist of it, the vampires being fish. Then we have Amy's Choice. That's definitely overlooked. It's quite a good story, and it's quite one what makes you think which world is real. The one in Ledworth, or Upper Ledworth as it's known, or the one in the TARDIS. Yeah, I think that's it for that. Series 6, Curse of the Black Spot. Yeah, I actually like that. I don't mind it. The siren's a bit annoying, the singing, but yeah, that's what a siren does, isn't it? Makes noise. Not the ambulance or fire engine or police, but siren from pirate times, what we're told in stories. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm rambling. Yeah, Curse of Black Spot. I was looking at Curse of Black Spot. I suppose I'll go for Closing Time. Closing Time, you could actually believe that it is Matt Smith's last episode with, you know, my time is running out, you know, those sort of lines. And just brilliant performance by Matt Smith. But for, you know, I don't know, apart from the Cybermen being destroyed by love, I just don't like that element, but the rest of the story is pretty good. It's quite amusing to see Matt Smith's Doctor in London, you know, just, well, not London, I don't know if it is London, but it's fun to see him in an everyday situation, like Power of Three, which is my next one, Power of Three, which I like to see the Doctor without units, you know, without the scientific stuff to do. He's just have to live an ordinary life, which is just cool to see. And then from Series 7 Part B, I suppose, is Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS. I like it. It's nice that we get to a story dedicated to the TARDIS. It's not as good as the Doctor's Wife, but still, it's okay. But Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS is pretty good, apart from we only get a few glimpses of the swimming pool and stuff like that. But the supporting cast are very wooden. But yeah, this has been, well, I practically enjoy all the Matt Smith era, bar a couple stories from Series 6, which I'll probably do a video of, going about my least favourite Doctor Who stories. Probably do that at some point. But yeah, this has been my guilty pleasures. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If you guys have any guilty pleasure stories, comment down below, or if you fancy it, make a video and put a video response or comment saying you've done a video, and I'll check it out. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next review, or video, whatever. So for now, bye bye.